Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another installment of Ask Me Anything by IFL. My name is Swee Chu, and I represent the Institute for Financial Literacy this evening. The Institute is a joint venture between MoneySense, the National Financial Education Initiative, and Singapore Polytechnic International. The purpose of the Institute is to provide free and unbiased financial education for members of the public. As such, we will not make any personal recommendations or express any opinions about companies or product selection. Should you want to act on any of the information this evening, we highly advise you to do your own due diligence, or you should consult a licensed financial advisor before making your decision to invest or buy any products. I have here this evening another panelist whom I would introduce to you later. So this evening's topic is titled Financial Habits and Behavior, Fear of Missing Out. So many people follow actions of others, herd instinct, without necessarily doing their own due diligence. We find it difficult to save, and we tend to procrastinate and postpone financial planning. Our behaviors are influenced by habits, and our mind is wired to think. So by learning these behavioral patterns, we can make wiser decisions. So this evening, we are going to discuss and let's find out together more about this subject. Before we do that, let me run a first Facebook poll to get things warm up. So if you watch your screen, the question is, if a bat and a ball cost $1.10 together, and the bat costs $1 more than the ball, how much does the ball cost? Is it A, 10 cents, or is it B, 5 cents? So take your poll. And whilst we are waiting for the results to come up, let me just say a few words on the topic. So our brains are wired to make shortcuts because it helps to save important seconds in our busy lives. So making shortcuts helps us in making these decisions easily. But sometimes these shortcuts result in suboptimal choices. And as a result, if we unconsciously follow, then we may end up in a different place. So the result of the poll, all 100 of you says B, 5 cents. So the answer is correct, it's 5 cents. Although intuitively, some of us may choose A, 10 cents. But then if you do the math, you will realize that actually, the cost is actually 5 cents. So before we move on to this evening's segment of live Q&A, let me introduce to you my fellow panelist, Jolene. Hi, Jolene, how are you?
Hey, hi, good evening, Swee Chu, and good evening to all listeners out there.
Yes. So Jolene and I will be taking questions. Some of the questions have already come in, and we will address one or two live before we actually go on to the segment on Slido, whereby you can then ask your own questions. So we encourage you to ask questions so that we can answer those live questions this evening. Now, Jolene, I have a few questions for you. So before we get started on the Q&A segment, let me ask you a question, right? Okay. So for you, you may have made many financial decisions in your life. So in the benefit of hindsight, are there any decisions now that you think have the benefit of thinking about it that in hindsight you would have done it differently? And
absolutely, Swee Chu, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, as you were sharing, I was also reflecting some of the financial decisions that I have made. I was happy that I made them, but on others, I wish I could have done better. And honestly, one area of this, if I can be very candid about it, is on the issue of savings. So of course, when we first started work, we knew the importance of savings. We tried to set aside some for savings. What I honestly wish I had done better was to set aside a higher amount of savings and not just stopping there, right? And to channel that into investments. In fact, recently I do read an article saying that on this aspect of investments, female tend to fare lesser as compared to the male counterparts. And on reflection, right, I must say that this is true, at least for myself. So really on hindsight, I wish I had started investing earlier, because by doing so, I could have then harnessed the effect of compound interest way earlier, right? And I will be able to see the fruits of my labor in a greater extent today. But as the saying goes, better late than never. So I also like to encourage our listeners today, if you find yourself agreeing with me, right, then, right, if you are younger, do start earlier. That is my advice.
Great. Take action. So that actually dovetails very nicely to our first question that we have received this evening earlier. And on my screen, the first question is here. When I was younger, I used up as much of my CPF savings as I could to pay for my property because I felt it was money I can see but not touch. Now I realize that I don't have enough CPF savings for retirement because I'm older now. How can I help my younger self? So Jolene, if this was you, how would you advise your younger self?
Okay, in fact, I could really advise my younger self to too, because as I look at the question, yeah, I can't say not too long ago. Quite a number of years ago, I was actually in that shoes. My husband and I, we were setting up our family, buying a house. So at the time, of course, we had to manage our cash flow, and we did turn to our CPF to finance our house, right? For that, because we wanted to maximize the cash flow. But at the same time, we were also very mindful that our CPF is also intended for our retirement, which is something I don't see as much in the people that I talk to these days. They do tend to feel that CPF, while it is my money, I can't touch it. So if I can't touch it, I will use it to pay for my property. I would like to encourage, people who may have that thought to also consider that while CPF can be used for housing, it definitely also can be used towards your retirement. So coming back to myself, while we did use a portion of our CPF for our property, subsequently, we actually channeled our payments to cash, because we recognize, even in the ordinary account, you are earning 2.5% on your CPF balances, and compound the interest, it is going to go to a long way. Right now, some people on the street may feel that, okay, there's a lot of restrictions with CPF, but we have to take a step back to understand why are there rules, why some of the rules may even be a little bit stringent. The intention of our CPF is really geared towards helping Singaporeans to be able to retire meaningfully. And that is why we have certain rules on the withdrawal for CPF. So one thing I recognize CPF has started doing, and doing very well, is to use persuasion. We see a lot more infographics even out on the various social media platforms, a lot of education, and that is the start towards behavior modification. You sow the seeds, and then of course, among friends, we do share with each other. So once, right, you are on board, you're convinced on the idea of CPS as a retirement, it will then modify your behavior. How will you modify your behavior? Well, as mentioned, some people could then channel their mortgage payments by using cash instead, because if liquidity allows them to do so, by using cash to service their housing loans, they are actually going to accumulate very good interest in their CPF balances. Right? Other ways could also be to transfer balances from your ordinary account into your special account. Now, the idea here is also to pre-commit yourself before you have a chance to spend that money. When it comes towards retirement planning, I always say you must be kind to your future self. Right? Why many people put away retirement planning? It is because sometimes it's hard to think about the future. But increasingly, we need to be mindful of what we call the concept of deferred gratification. And then, right, you will naturally modify your behavior towards wanting to plan more for your retirement.
Thank you so much, Jolene. You touched on two very interesting concepts. So the first one was behavior modification, right? Then the second one was deferred gratification. So when you talk about behavior modification, essentially it's to consciously be aware of our biases, consciously to relearn and then to challenge some of our assumptions. It reminds me of this book written by Daniel Kahneman, who is one of the Nobel Prize winner for economics. And the book is called Thinking Fast and Slow. So in that book, he talks about two different systems of thinking, right? So one, it's where we make snap decisions, spur of the moment, we make quick decisions, such as, for example, buying groceries or choosing our lunch. And the second one, it's more deliberate, more analytical. So it will be for bigger decisions like maybe planning for a holiday, buying a home, or investments. So one of the hacks you can use for the first type of decision making, it's to slow down, stop and pause for 10 seconds maybe, and then think about it before you react to your habitual way of doing things. So sometimes by slowing down, stopping to think a bit, it can actually help us to break some of these snap decision habits. And then the second one, which is more analytical, it's, as you said, use research, use information to justify why some of your assumptions or biases could be wrong. And then you spoke about deferred gratification, right? So it's basically to delay our spending now so that we can save up for future benefits. We always tell our participants in IFL seminar, if you cannot afford something, don't buy it and don't spend it and buy it on credit, because the interest is very punitive, and then it will snowball, and in the end it will hurt you in the future. So better to save up and then buy the item, so you defer the current benefit to later. Now, then we have platforms nowadays like buy now, pay later, BNPL. You cannot afford to pay for the sneaker. Never mind, you can pay for it over 3 interest-free installments. Buy the sneakers now. No interest, can immediately enjoy the benefit of the sneaker. Free lunch. Or am I missing something, Jolene?
Yes, it's human nature to want to have our cake and eat it, isn't it? So as you correctly mentioned, Sichu, with this new BNPL, it seems that, there's interest free, it doesn't add to my debt, I can enjoy the item. But yes, is there such a thing as a free lunch? Well, it's about making an informed decision. So for people who are considering BNPL, my encouragement to you is to read the fine print. Is there really no cost? Now, just a very quick read through the fine print will highlight certain relevant costs, such as the administrative costs. And one thing you need to take note is the penalties. Penalties which will kick in if a person were to miss an installment payment, right? So that will be cost added to you. Now, more importantly, with BNPL, I would like to stress is, how does that change your behavior? How does that change your buying behavior? Could it actually prompt a person to have a greater tendency to just buy the item without going through the thought process, or without going through the decision making between, is this a need or is this a want? It can then be very easy for that person to see something, he likes it, and he purchases it. And that is what we call instant gratification, isn't it, right?
Yep.
So one item on BNPL, it can lead to 2, 3, 4 items on BNPL, right? And one installment could then lead to 10 installments, which could be sizable, which needs to be paid regardless of your circumstances. Now, even if the total installments are well within your ability to afford, well within your income, it is also very true that this additional spending could have otherwise been channeled to your investment, right? Could otherwise be channeled to helping you fulfill your other financial goals. It could be, early retirement. It could be even, affording a property, for a down payment, etc. Right? Because it does facilitate to a certain level of instant gratification. So we are not saying this is a poor scheme, but we need to highlight that for all listeners out there, you need to understand and be very mindful not to fall into a trap that, you get yourself into a trap of instant gratification through this scheme, right?
Indeed, I think one lesson that is shining through is really information, right? So we need to be informed. Right? So with that, I'm going to do a second poll. Okay, so if you follow the screen, the second Facebook poll, the question is this: you bought a concert ticket a month ago for $200. The day before the concert, you suddenly find that you have lost the ticket. You cannot find it. Now, would you still go to the concert tomorrow by buying and paying another $200 for a new ticket? Is the answer A, yes, I will buy a new ticket, or B, no, I'm not willing to pay $200 plus the $200 earlier, $400 for this concert? What is your choice? We learn from experience. So when we were younger, we observed our parents and adults around us, and we develop habits. And these habits unconsciously influence the way we make choices as we grow up in life. But it is possible to change some of these habits, especially if the habit is resulting in a suboptimal choice. And it's possible to relearn them as long as you are aware, and then to change the habit so that you will be able to arrive at a more optimal decision. So the poll results come in. 40% says A, yes, and 60% says B, no. So there is no right or wrong answer to this question. Really, it's a function of how much do you really want to watch this concert. Is it worth $200? And I think it's important that if you chose B, that you realize that you have made the unconscious choice that the earlier $200 you've spent is part of the cost of the new ticket, whereas actually it is not. This is what we call the fallacy of sunk cost. The first $200 that you have paid, it's gone. You already spent the money. You got the ticket. The fact that the ticket is lost is not something that should influence your future decision. Really, when you're sitting here today, asking yourself, should I buy a ticket to watch the concert tomorrow? It should be, am I willing to pay $200 for the ticket? And if you were willing to pay $200 for it in the first instance, why not? Why not now? Another way is to reframe the question and say that the day before you go and watch the concert, you found out that you lost your wallet, and inside your wallet was $200. So you lost $200 in your wallet. Would you still pay another $200 to watch the concert? Because I've reframed the question differently, maybe the answer is yes, because the money I lost is different from the concert ticket. So really, sometimes the way we frame the mental accounting can lead us to a suboptimal decision. So here we are going to be talking about mental accounting, right? The way we have different pots of money. So Jolene, you must have heard of house money.
Oh,
House effect, right? So would you like to talk to us a little bit about that?
Certainly. In fact, as you were talking about mental accounting, that concept of house money came to my mind, Sweet. Also, now what is house money to our listeners out there who may be wondering? So allow me to paint you a scenario. Now, assuming you have a situation whereby you won $200 in the lottery, congratulations. How would you regard the $200? Is there a tendency to be more willing to spend that windfall? Because mentally, right, to you it's free money. I didn't work for it. Right? I didn't put in effort, and it just arrived through a lottery. Right? So because it's $200 which I want, maybe I'll be inclined not to go through the decision-making process. Okay, am I buying this item because it's a need or want? Or are you simply buying because I have so-called free money, inverted commas, right? Okay. Now, what I would like to say is that, as what Suchu have mentioned, you mentioned about framing, isn't it, Suchu? Our decision to spend this $200 should not stem from the mode of obtaining, because whether we earn it, whether we won it in a lucky draw, what is true is that this $200 cash could have been saved rather than to be spent. So it does require us to rethink the way we look at things. Right? And this house money concept, subconsciously, right, we may act on it. Now, to be honest, when I have one lucky draw, yes, there is a tendency, oh, I want it, and you get very happy. But then I tell myself, why should I allow that to change my buying behavior? It shouldn't, right? But human nature, there is a tendency, right, that we think we don't work for it, okay, we can spend it anyhow. So this evening, I hope I can introduce to you a new concept whereby we should anchor, okay, we should make our decision making, not just based on how we arrive at the money, but what we could have applied that money towards. It requires us to look at it from a different side of the coin, isn't it?
Yes, thank you, Jolene. So Jolene has touched on two concepts, framing and anchoring. So use of two simple slides to further explain this. So framing, essentially, it's how basically the question is a frame to make us make decisions in a narrow frame of reference. And I think commercials and merchants and all that has done this job very, very well. Right? Every day we are bombarded by info on how we should spend our money. And a lot of it is all about framing. Jolene also talked about anchoring. So anchoring, it's in when you have imperfect or incomplete information, you develop a artificial point of reference to help you to make judgment, to sort of frame your reference. But because the point of reference may not be exact, then you may actually make a wrong choice or make a suboptimal choice as a result of that reference. So for example, right, every night now, before I go to sleep, I watch the news on COVID by MOH. And I'm being bombarded every evening by how many people have passed away from COVID for quite a number of weeks or maybe even months now. Subconsciously, I may develop this reference point that COVID fatality is actually very high. A lot of people die from COVID. But actually, do you know that in the years and years past, and even maybe now, similar numbers of people, especially the elderly, die from flu and pneumonia related illnesses every year. Just that we don't report this death and we do not put it saliently in our face every day. We actually don't realize that COVID fatality, whilst sad, is actually not very different from some other fatalities that we may unconsciously not be kept informed about. So I think it's important when we make choices and make decisions, not just to remember the framing, but also to remember where we take our point of reference from. Okay, that's been very good talking, the two of us. I think it's time for us to spend on questions that our audience may ask this evening. So I encourage you to either scan this QR code and type in your question on Slido. You can be anonymous, or you can just simply type your question on the Facebook page that you are on, so that you don't need to go into another app, right? So I'm going to give you a few seconds to do that, whilst my colleague will transport us to Slido, and let's see what are the questions that are being asked this evening. Okay, so I hope you are seeing these questions with me. So there are two questions on the screen. The first one from Lobang. It's, can you explain why merchants give early bird discount? Does it mean that it makes money sense to always buy early and get the discount? That's an interesting question. So as we all know, businesses practice what is called discriminatory pricing. So basically they price the same product differently based on consumers' willingness to buy. So those people like maybe Lobang here, who's always looking for a good deal, are willing to commit if they get the discount early. Whereas there may be other consumers who are not so particular about discounts, who would be prepared to pay the full price. But having said that, if you are sure that you want to buy this product, it obviously makes sense to save some money and buy it early. However, do pay attention to the fact that you're not buying it just because it's a good deal, a discount, right? Again, a mental accounting or a framing issue, but rather you actually wanted this item, so buy early and get the discount. Make sure it's not a perishable, because then it may not store very well for very long. What do you think, Jolene?
Indeed, I agree with you, Suchu. So it's like taking one step back. Wow, discount, everybody loves a discount, to be honest. I myself included. Right? But it is important to anchor ourselves to the right basis. Right? In the first place, is this item something that we already have been planning to purchase? Right? Because if it's something that we do not need, we should not be enticed purely just by the discount. right? And also it depends on the type of item, like you mentioned, due to perishability, or even packages, for example. Now, I do remember in the past, in a pre-COVID world, when we need to vacation because of the school holidays for the kids, we know it's always June, December, and airlines typically give out discounts, which you have to pay way in advance, which we do so, right? Because we have a budget for vacation and we know if you book early, we can actually enjoy the discount. But we are still very mindful that along with the early commitment, there are also certain risks involved, isn't it? Right? For example, if something were to pop up nearing then, it could mean that we have to make changes to the plans. And in making changes to airfare, air ticket, for example, there would be administrative costs involved. So early commitment can get us the discount, but depending on the nature of our purchase, right, there could be other unforeseen circumstances along the way, right?
Okay, great. The next question, it's buying Toto or 4D a wise thing? Are we invariably overestimating our chance of winning? So I'm not much of a gambler or game of chance myself, but I would say that if we were to look factually at information, then I've actually looked at the Singapore Pool's website before. To win the first prize in Toto, so all the 6 digits to be the same as the draw, the probability of that is actually 1 in 14 million. 1 in 14 million. That is very, very remote. Okay. So one of the things that I have learned is that average person is not very good at dealing with big numbers or estimating probabilities, because that's not how we were brought up, or we were trained. So actually we don't estimate it very, very well. So a lot of people tell me buying Toto or 4D is buying a hope. You don't buy, you won't get the prize. Fine. So buy one ticket. That's one chance to win it. You don't have to buy 100 tickets, or you don't have to multiply by 100 times, because 1 out of 14 million, even if you buy 100, you times 100, is still a very, very small number. So buy a hope. If you are lucky, maybe you will get strike the first prize, but don't overestimate your chance of winning. Now, shall we look at the next question then? Should I pay the medical bills using CPF MediSave if available instead of cash? After all, there are very limited use for MediSave account monies. Okay, so this is got to do something with framing and mental accounting, right, Jolene? You want to take this question?
Definitely. So this is pretty similar to our mindset towards using our CPF ordinary account to pay for our housing, right? Because we feel that, okay, this is money that I can see, I cannot touch. Then I try to lower my out-of-pocket and channel these expenses to my CPF. So for those of us out there, some of us may not know, but our CPF MediSave is actually paying us 4% per annum interest, right? So definitely the intention of the MediSave account is to help defray healthcare costs. Presently, probably our integrated shield plan will be using the annual withdrawal limit to shoulder some of the premium payments. Our MediShield Life as well, these are being funded from our MediSave account, right? So if you need to maximize your liquidity, because in a healthcare crisis, it is very unfortunate. We want to be able to have the peace of mind to be able to treat our illnesses. Right? So yes, you can use your MediSave account, but after all, right, do take note that it should not be a free money, because this is still your money. So if your circumstances requires you to tap onto it, then yes, you should tap onto it. But like I mentioned, be very careful how you regard this CPF money, right? Don't regard it as a free money, because it is definitely not. It is still your money. And with life expectancy on the rise, you would want your MediSave to be able to see you through all the way to the end, right? Especially towards the later years when wear and tear is actually more prevalent.
Yes, indeed. I have also heard of stories whereby salespeople would tell clients, oh, you should buy this Cashew Life supplement, okay? Because you can use MediSave to pay for it. And anyway, the MediSave money is there. And I think you should buy it if you believe in the benefits of the product, if the salesperson will explain to you why the product is suitable for you, but you should not do it just because the money is there and you can use the so-called free money, which is actually not free, it's your money to buy the product. So I think it's absolutely quite important. And there is actually quite a lot of use for MediSave. It's just that in our younger years, we probably don't see much of that use because we are healthy, right? We are healthy, right? So I can attest to that because I take my 86-year-old mother to the clinic quite often, and for various tests and also for regular consultation and medication, and very often including dental and some of the therapies and all that, she could actually make use of her MediSave account. So actually there are more use for MediSave money than we can imagine. And I recall reading somewhere that the MediSave account balance is actually tiered towards taking two very big medical emergencies in your lifetime. So basically, it's actually money is catered to handle real big medical emergencies. Okay, let's look at the next question. With interest-free installments, I can spread out the payments over time instead of using my cash flow now. So I should do it right. Actually, Jolene pretty much answered this question earlier with the BNPL discussion. So the answer is interest-free. Read the fine prints. There are things like late payment charges, penalties, and more importantly, the more you buy on this installment, all these installments add up. Can you actually service all these installments and pay on time? Because if not, then sooner or later it is going to catch up with you. And whilst we did not expressly touch upon it, installments that are interest-free in the future still constitute as financial obligation. So whilst credit bureau may not officially see it as a form of debt, actually you should use debt numbers to calculate your debt ratio and determine for yourself whether you are actually financially healthy or not. So it's important to keep that in mind, right, Jolene?
Definitely. Right, because we want to maintain a healthy credit bureau history as well. In time to come, when we really need to take on a loan for legitimate purpose. For example, most of us, when we purchase our homes, we take on a housing loan, all that will come under the spotlight. So with the interest-free installment, really is the mindset that, do we use that as an enabler for instant gratification? We need to be very careful if we find ourselves falling into that tendency. Isn't it, Sichu?
Yep. Okay, next question. Sounds like it's going to be for you, Jolene. There seems to be great deals on e-commerce platforms. More I shop, more I save as the tiered discount gets higher and I enjoy free shipping. Am I really saving? What am I missing?
All
Jolene?
right. Allow me to take that question, Sichu. So today is the 16th of November. Just 5 days ago is what we call the 11/11. Right, we see the sales across all the e-commerce platforms. So you get tiered discounts, everybody was looking for the coupons. And yes, there's a tendency, right? Because the tiered discount gets higher. So earlier, Srichu, you mentioned about framing. I think this is a very good example of how we can apply the idea of framing. Now, when we see the tiered discount and the free shipping, our frame of mind shifted towards what we get to enjoy. And it kind of shifts us away as to the basis of whether do we really need the item? Are we making an additional or maybe even frivolous purchase? Something we wouldn't have done, something that we wouldn't have need. And so you see, framing is a very powerful tool. It can go either ways, right? So if we are aware of how it works, then when we look at the e-commerce sales, if you need something genuinely good for you, this is your chance to be able to purchase the item that you have been planning for, that you need it, and you get to enjoy it with a lower price. But however, if you get carried away, right, and think that, I'm actually saving more because the more I buy, the more I save. But take a step back and think, right? In the first place, were you even looking at this item? Or were you simply adding things to the cart in order to enjoy the free shipping, for example? Right? Sometimes we don't think too much because with the deals, as what I've seen just a few days ago, right, the discounts can be so tremendous such that the ticket price per item could be very low. And it's just like the bag of potato chips we buy at the supermarket. We don't think too much, we just put it in our trolley. Okay, so be very careful on that, right? Sometimes once in a while we get carried away, it is fine. But if we habitually, right, if we habitually get into the mindset every time there's a sale, in order to enjoy the highest tier of discount, in order to enjoy the free shipping, I start adding things to my shopping cart which I don't need. Then, right, eventually we really will fall into the situation whereby we just allow ourselves to give in to instant gratification, right? And 20 years, 30 years down the road, you'll be wondering, why is it that, my savings for retirement are inadequate? Because the little adds up. Right? In the earlier years, if we could have been more mindful about the small purchases, then we could have actually ended up with a lot more when we really need it the most, right?
Great. Now let me take a sidetrack instead of looking at the next question, right? So I see this question coming up, which is we keep talking about analyzing decisions, being aware of this, thinking about that, stopping and thinking. It seemed to me that life is actually going to be quite tedious because we are having to analyze and think all the time. So I can just imagine a younger person who's just starting out in life saying that, oh wow, it's isn't that life very dreary in the sense if we have to nickel and dime everything, right? So are there good tips or good habits or things that can help us without being so laborious? I mean, what do you think we would say to this question?
Okay, maybe just on a slightly different angle, what I do with my children, is to incorporate habits. Because a habit, be it good or bad, once it takes root, it is part of who a person is. Right? You don't really think too much because you habitually do this. And it is what we at IFL actually advocate, for example, savings, right? We say when you receive your income, you should save 10%. And this is what I do with my children in hopes that when they eventually go out to work, regardless of their income level, this savings is already a habit, right? It's not something that they have to put through a thought process. Should I or should I not? Because it is already part of what they do. Now, is instilling a habit easy? The truth is no, right? Because if I give you an opportunity to choose between savings or spending, yeah, maybe, right? Human nature, you want to live in the moment, hashtag YOLO, right? You only live once, you want to satisfy. So at the beginning, there really is an intention, right? You need to be mindful, purposeful. But once you have it in place, it will become part of you and you don't really go through the thought process anymore. Okay, but for the start, right, why do we need to convince? As what we mentioned, right, with propaganda, with infographics, information, it's education. That is the start of behavior modification. I have to convince you of the value of doing so. And then I'll teach you what steps you can take. So once you have both the mindset and the action in marriage to each other, you have half the battle won. Right? Because when you encounter challenges, when you encounter opportunities to spend, right, maybe initially the first few times you actually need to be very mindful, put yourself through the thought process. But you do it one time, you do it 2 times, you realize, hey, it's not that difficult. And soon it becomes part of your DNA, right?
Great. So start young. Having said that, I guess there are tools that even IFL or other organizations would have to help with the process, right? So we often encourage our participants to budget. So when you budget, it's a conscious decision to allocate and prioritize your spending on the needs and on the wants, as you mentioned earlier. And I think it's also important that when we are budgeting, we should also budget for contingencies, and exigencies, things like fund money, for example. We allow ourselves to have a little bit of fun every month. We say, okay, X dollars for that, so that life may not be so disciplined and tedious that we are always saving, but we can also enjoy ourselves a little bit. And nowadays with mobile apps, mobile phones, you can actually install one of these dashboards or platforms on your phone that, once you overspend, for example, the app can actually prompt you to say, hey, actually you have spent beyond this on this category and so on and so forth. So I think there are tools out there, certainly, to help you make this decision easier. But as you rightly pointed out, habits starts from young.
Indeed,
and
Suchu. And to
habits.
add on, Suchu, maybe we talk about the financial products, as you mentioned, the budgeting tools, right? So one thing that came to my mind was the products that we have in today's market. In fact, even last time we have this save as you earn product, right? That
That's
automatically
correct.
a portion of the salary is gyroed away into a separate account that you can't touch.
Mhm.
So it instills a discipline. But I see that, okay, being extended to other investment products as well, right? We using the concept of dollar cost averaging, right?
Mhm.
You can actually gyro a portion of your income into an investment instrument. Right? A few of the local banks, they do have this product.
Regular
So
savings
again,
plan, right?
regular savings plan, indeed, you are right. So all these are also tools to support us in this journey.
Great. Okay, so let's move on to the next question, right? Are online trading platforms with low or zero commission fees really better for me? How does the company make money? So I've come across this phrase, especially in today's digital world. If something is free, then I am the product. So basically, to say that there's no free lunch. So there's other ways that actually the company is actually making money off from you. But having said that, I would probably say low or zero commission. I would make sure that all the fine prints are clear, that I really verified. And two, I would also be trying to do research or reviews, look at reviews about the platform, about its transparency, its speed of execution, and things like that, so that I'm not sort of lulled into the fact that it has low or zero commission, but actually it's not so transparent, and in the end the price execution may not be so good. Yeah. So I guess research. What do you think, Jolene? Any other comments that you may have?
Indeed, Suchu, research is important. Sometimes as an investor, we get enticed, when a platform says low to zero commission. Right? But that could be a new platform. And increasingly, we are seeing the non-typical brokerage houses. Right? So there's a few of them with the app, you can trade the US stocks. And because they are fairly new to the market, there are to entice consumers, to entice investors to trade with them. They do offer low, zero commission. They offer you a single stock of a listed company, for example. But going back to what you say, right? We should not just be penny wise, pound foolish. Of course, we're not saying that these firms are not legitimate. But if we are always very careful to read the fine print, we will not be misled away, right? This low to zero commissions could be genuine, but that should not be the basis of our decision making. And we should do some research on the trading platforms, right, to understand, right, who are they backed by, who are their shareholders, are they licensed and certified by MAS? Those are very important factors to take into consideration because we are, after all, investing our hard-earned money.
Correct. Let me move to the bottom and take that question on children first. That one is for you, Jolene. Huh? So with everything going digital, I worry that my kids won't understand the value of money and don't know budget as they do not deal with physical cash. Any advice? Indeed, it's true. Psychologists have said that digital money is easier to spend because we don't see it and we don't feel it. Physical money is a little bit more valued. What do you think? How would you advise this participant?
It is true because as a parent myself of two school-going children, right, I do struggle with that. And I grew up in the era, right, where I deal with physical cash. So I see for myself the actual dollars and cents I start off with at the beginning of the day and how much I have left at the end of the day, right? It is in your face, you can't run away from it. But with things going digital, the allowance is a number, right? They just see the number going up and going down. But I do also recognize that going back, it is not the solution. Right? In this world of digitalization, we have to accept digital is here to stay. And what we can do, while the methods have to change, we can still anchor our children back to the basic fundamentals. Right? Children, when they are young, think of them like a piece of white paper. You can mold them, you can guide them, you can inculcate the right habits on them. So when we want to teach on the value of money, right, it should still be the same. Right? When you get your allowance, I may credit it into your digital watch, but you are going to channel that a percentage of that into your savings account. Or like what I do, my daughter is still receiving physical cash, right? We give her 220, immediately 20 cents go into her savings box, right? When she make a decision, right? Even when we go shopping on weekends, to the store, to the bookstore, she, being a child, she has her wants as well. She may ask, can I actually purchase this book? Or the younger one will typically ask, can I buy that toy? Right? So instead of saying that, it's too expensive, we don't have money. So it takes a bit of effort. It takes time to actually teach them that the money that we use, okay, we could have better spent it. Or sometimes I deliberately hold back the purchase, and because we do not want the children to take things for granted as well. I do hear sometimes, as I was walking, where when children are asking, to purchase something, and certain parents just give the reply, oh, I got no money. So that is actually a very convenient way of dismissing the child,
Indeed.
right? Dismissing the child, and
Indeed.
case closed, case closed. But if you think about it, right, Suchu, the message that we are also sending to the child is, so in other words, if I have the money, I can buy it. You
Absolutely.
actually skip the step of trying to understand, is this item worth the price that is being purchased, right? Because you say, I got no money, right? It's just a way to close the case quickly, right? So it is something that when I heard, it is a stark reminder to myself not to make the same mistake, right? So yes, it takes time. Yes, it takes effort. It takes convincing, because we have to face it now. Our children may not always accept what we say. They may put up a negotiation. They may put up a struggle. It is then our job as parents, as our duty as parents, to be able to stand by and importantly, model the behavior.
That's right.
Now, we can't assume that children being young, they are not observant. If you ask me, I think all the more they are very observant. Right? What we teach, we jolly well better walk the talk. Because if we are going to display a different behavior, right, it sends a very conflicting message to them. Right? Yeah.
Actually, if I am correct, IFL does have a workshop called Money Sense for your child. So whereby the trainer would take the participants through an hour and a half of various information slides and even collaterals that the parents could then use to teach their child, correct? Or
You're
money
right,
sense,
Suchu.
right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So that workshop increasingly is also very popular, because as parents, we are also arriving at the realization that while academics are important, it is not the sole deciding factor for our child. We want our child to be able to navigate the financial challenge that they may face as they approach adulthood when they start work. And that has to start from young, because habits has to be established from young. So for that workshop, we cater to parents of various age groups, preschool, primary school, and even secondary school going age, because we recognize at these three different stages, there are different messages that can be taught. And of course, there will be different methods in order to bring about, right?
Great. So before we go this evening, I will show you a QR code where you can scan and find out what other workshops IFL has. So let me backtrack a bit and look at some of the other questions. So there's one about stock market. How about investing in stock market? Is it another game of chance? Well, I would say that if you look at the way prices of stocks move on a daily basis, there is some element of randomness to it, right? But having said that, stock prices are nonetheless anchored by real businesses or companies that are actually have got a business models generating sales and profits. And especially in a market that is regulated like ours, SGX, then there's a certain amount of due diligence and also a regime and also sort of corporate transparency and all that to make sure that the companies that are listed are indeed legitimate and good for, I won't say good, but suitable and appropriate for everyday investors. So I would say I don't agree that investing in stock market is a game of chance. Actually, you have an opportunity to analyze, study, and buy companies that are promising and have good future cash flow. Although if you look at the daily movement of prices, it does look like some element of randomness and probability there. Not sure if you agree with me, Jolene.
I agree with you absolutely, Suchu. Another thing I would like to also highlight is a mindset of an investor going into the stock market. Are you going in to time the market, or are you prepared to go in and spend time in the market? Because if your mindset going in is one that's very opportunistic, right? You just want to time. Every investor will tell you they would like to buy low, sell high.
Mhm.
But I always say when you know that the price is the highest, you will know after it starts to drop that it was yesterday,
Mhm.
right? So the mindset going into the stock market is very important. And we are thankful that our local stock market is regulated. We have sound corporate governance. So the companies that we are investing, there are fundamentals that we can study, be it the annual report, be it the macro news, be it any new announcement before we make our informed decision. Right. So if we go in just to time with a mindset of a speculator, then it will be another game of chance. So I will always encourage investors. The stock market is not a casino, all right? There are proper fundamentals that you can actually pay attention to that can help you to do your due diligence before you start your investment proper.
Right. So one of the way to avoid this concept of chance is basically regular investing, the regular savings plan that you alluded to earlier, using dollar cost averaging. So when it is high, you buy less. When it is low, you buy more. So over time, you actually average the cost of entry. And with proper diversification, you will be able to sort of mitigate the volatility of the stock market. So, yep. All right. So moving on. The question at the bottom, in insurance benefit illustrations. So if you buy a life insurance policy, the insurance agent is obligated to print benefits illustration that will show you different projected numbers. Okay, and the regulation now is that the projection has to use two different percentage as a projection number. One is 3% and one is 4.25. So basically the benefit illustration will show you in a case of a 3% annual return, what would the cash benefits be at different ages? And if it is at 4.25% per annum, what would the benefits be in each of these ages? The question is, does it mean that the actual return will be within this range of 3 and 4.25? I think the first thing to qualify is that in a benefits illustration, there's always a guaranteed number and a non-guaranteed number, right? So I think it's important to pay attention to the fact that this 3% and 4.25% is actually referring to the non-guaranteed number. And so really it is a projection, nothing more than mathematics. And it does not actually have sort of a guarantee that the financial returns would be in the low end 3%, in the high end 4.25%. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of months ago, they've actually reduced these numbers. It used to be a little bit higher, 3.25 and 4.75, and they've reduced it to this, mainly because the stock market returns and interest rates overall in the last couple of years has also been relatively lower. And so therefore, it's no longer realistic for them to have such a high number. But again, this goes to the framing and the point of reference or anchoring that we were talking about earlier, isn't it?
Indeed, Shu, you are right. So since we are on the topic of framing, and we are talking about this insurance benefit, I would also like to qualify that this cash benefit pertains to what we call bundle insurance products that combines maybe life protection with a cash value. So you're talking about your whole life, your endowment, and even your investment linked policy. Now, it's important when we make our decision, we first also note that the purpose of buying is primarily for insurance, right? Primarily for insurance, but because these products are bundled, there is a cash benefit associated with it, which you correctly mentioned, Suchu. This is our illustration percentages. It is not a guarantee of what you can expect. So as your financial advisor is going through the product, there will be a column guaranteed interest so that you can see. And of course, we will have two other columns showing you if the returns are at 3%, what is the total cash value you can expect at the various age group? Or if the returns is at 4.25%, then what are the returns that you could really be looking at? Personally, what I do is I will do look at the guaranteed interest, and I will also ask my advisor, can you share with me historically how has the payout been for your insurance house? So that gives me a good gauge. But is that the only reason why I decide whether or not to buy this insurance product? I'll be very honest, no, because if I set up to buy insurance, my primary concern is actually that of protection, right?
Great. Wow, we've had so many questions and running out of time. In fact, I have time only for one last question. So I'm going to pick the one on property. Question goes like this. So some suggest to build passive income through buying an investment property, collecting rentals to pay the mortgage. What can go wrong? I remember reading this article last Sunday on the Sunday Times, and it was an ex-journalist writing about investing. And there was a quote that she put in there. Bad decisions are made when there is only one version of the future. Bad decisions are made when there's only one version of the future. So I think in all investments, whether it's in properties or in stocks and in bonds or in commodities or anything, there has to be more than one version of the future when we think about it, right? Obviously, the one that we hope will come true, but then we must also contemplate alternative futures, one whereby things go wrong and things go terribly wrong because the fundamentals go wrong. Because what will happen in those situations would actually influence our decision upfront. Perhaps, Jolene, you want to make a few comments about this property investment and collecting rental?
I like what you said about alternative outcomes with you, because when I enter into an investment, property or not, one of the questions I actually ask myself is, what is the worst case scenario? And is this worst case scenario something within my ability to withstand? Right. So with property, a lot of us, our property market is under the spotlight. I do believe in the long-term fundamentals of our property market, right? But prices are also very high, and there are many people jumping on the bandwagon, right? So on the surface, it sounds very good. I have one property to stay, and I have a second investment property, which I can collect rent to pay the mortgage. But we also have to be prepared for other variables, because firstly, perhaps I can just highlight, we are in a low interest rate environment now, so that makes financing more affordable. But what if interest rates are to go up, right? And if we are going to look at different financial houses, there are also talks about that we are not going to be in this perpetual low interest rate environment. So when there's an upward adjustment of interest rates, will we then be able to continue financing the mortgage, right? Secondly, passive income through rental. What if your rental is not forthcoming? Because in between rentals, the property could be sitting out there without a tenant, or you may have issues with tenant, etc. And other costs that are peripheral costs that we still have to continue to bear that will erode our returns. You are looking at your maintenance costs, you're looking at the property tax, and even your income tax, right, from the investment property. So when we make a decision, do not just look at the rental, do not just look at your mortgage, do not just look at the purchase price. If you want to look at it holistically, right, you have to consider all these peripheral costs as well. And more importantly, what if the property prices do not go up, right, within the span that you want? Do remember, property is unlike other financial products because it is actually not as liquid as other products, right? The marketing takes time, the legal completion takes time as well. Okay.
Very good. Thank you. So at the end of the day, big decisions like this, do research, do analysis, and let the facts and the numbers and the scenario analysis justify the decision. So I'm afraid we have kind of run out of time. So I'm going to stop the Q&A here and go back to my PowerPoint slide. Okay. So if you have more questions, right, please go to our community learning platform called finlearn, finlearn.sg. So you can sign up using a user ID and password, or you can use Google or Facebook. And this is a community learning platform whereby participants, users can ask questions. You can ask questions anonymously as well. and have our moderators answer the questions, or other users answer the questions as well. If you don't want to ask questions, you can also look at some of the other questions that have been asked and what are some of the answers. So it's a very dynamic way for you to have your answers, your questions answered, and to also continue your financial learning journey by learning from the answers to other people's questions. So some of the questions that we didn't manage to answer this evening, we hope that you will go to this finlearn platform, ask them, and then have the moderator and other users answer the questions. And then there are also prizes to be won and contests every so often. So I encourage you to go to that platform. Otherwise, you can always email us at ifl@spe.sg. Upcoming public sessions. So just now, Jolene and I talked about money sense for your child. So I know there is one coming up in the next couple of weeks. Do go to our website under events or scan this QR code to see our list of public events. And because of COVID, these events are now organized virtually through Zoom. We hope that there will come a time where we can meet physically face-to-face, but for the moment, it will be on Zoom. And true to our mandate, it is free, and also it will be unbiased in terms of its content. So you can sign up and continue your learning journey. There will be other types of workshops on investing, on insurance, on financial planning, and things like that. Do follow and like and visit our various social media platforms, our Facebook page, our Instagram page, our Telegram pages. And this IFL Ask Me Anything sessions will be recorded on our Facebook page. If you go to videos, you will be able to watch the previous 10 or 11 sessions that we have done this year so far. So it's actually quite a journey we've taken this year. Since April, we've started with the first session on bonds, and then we went on to talk about insurances, estate planning, retirement planning, digital tools, financial fitness, investing, credit, loans. And then today we are ending the year. Yes, I know it's in November, but we're ending the year with these sessions on financial habits and behavior. Do give us your feedback and by scanning this QR code. And if not, then we will be back in February. So take care and stay safe, everyone. And do visit our previous sessions that are now available on a recorded form on our Facebook page. Good evening and thank you for listening.